La bulle de l'IA va-t-elle éclater ou l'IA générative est-elle là pour durer? Le secteur de l'intelligence artificielle connaît une euphorie financière sans précédent. Pourtant, la situation demeure très confuse. Les investissements dans l'IA atteignent des sommets vertigineux. Citons la levée de fonds de 40 milliards de dollars d'OpenAI avec une valorisation de 300 milliards de dollars et celle de 1,7 milliard, certes plus modeste, d'euros de Mistral AI. Malgré cela, certains commentateurs se montrent très critiques. Citons, par exemple, prédit que la bulle de l'IA éclatera au 4e trimestre 2025. Tout cela alimente un débat passionné, mais pas toujours rationnel. J'ai voulu confronter ces inquiétudes à l'expertise de Bernard Schaffrick, analyste principal chez Forrester Research. Son analyse se révèle à la fois perspicace et nuancée. D'après lui, une correction aura bien lieu, mais l'IA générative demeure trop populaire pour disparaître. Des interviews, des chiffres, des faits, des études. Pas de blabla, ce sont les podcasts de Visionary Marketing disponibles sur toutes les bonnes chaînes de balado-diffusion. Bonjour et bienvenue dans les podcasts de Visionary Marketing. Le sujet du jour, quand la bulle de l'IA va-t-elle éclater, avec Bernard Schaffrick de Forrester Research. Bernard Schaffrick de Forrester fait partie des meilleurs experts en intelligence artificielle. Il nous livre ici une analyse nuancée qui dépasse de loin les simples considérations financières. Son regard sur un éventuel éclatement de la bulle de l'IA apporte des éclairages essentiels pour comprendre où se dirigent vraiment ces technologies de rupture. À la fin de cette analyse en français, vous trouverez l'interview originale en anglais. Alors, cette bulle de l'IA, est-ce une réalité financière ? On ne peut répondre de façon univoque à la question d'un éventuel éclatement de la bulle de l'IA, nous dit Bernard Schaffrick. Tout dépend du point de vue que l'on adopte. Cette dualité constitue probablement l'une des clés pour comprendre la situation actuelle et les risques d'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Je cite. « Il est presque impossible d'obtenir une réponse en une seule phrase de la part d'un analyste, nous dit-il avec humour. Permettez-moi d'en utiliser deux. Premièrement, tout dépend évidemment du profil de votre interlocuteur. Si nous parlons des investisseurs financiers, alors oui, tous les signaux montrent qu'il s'agit d'une bulle car des sommes colossales y sont injectées. Plus de 120 milliards de dollars en dépenses d'investissement pour les infrastructures d'IA uniquement, rien que par les 7 géants de la technologie, comme nous dit Bernard Schaffrick, ceux qu'on appelle vulgairement les GAFAM en France, sans que ça soit véritablement le bon terme. Cette bulle pourrait donc éclater, nous dit-il. Ce constat prend toute sa pertinence quand on considère l'investissement de 9 milliards de dollars de Google dans un centre de données IA en Oklahoma pour des infrastructures avancées d'entraînement de l'IA. Cette perspective financière ne raconte toutefois qu'une partie de l'histoire. L'adoption des technologies obéit à une logique différente de celle des marchés financiers, comme l'a confirmé Schaffrick lors de notre échange sur les risques d'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Je cite toujours. Mais si vous vous mettez maintenant à la place des décideurs d'entreprise, des responsables technologiques ou même des utilisateurs de l'IA, beaucoup vous diront « Peu m'importe que cette bulle éclate, la technologie existe et elle ne disparaîtra pas ». Quels que soient les montants et toutes les transactions financières autour du secteur de l'IA, les gens utilisent vraiment cette technologie, nous dit Schaffrick, et ils apprécient ce qu'ils voient. Ce n'est peut-être pas la révolution de rupture que certains imaginent, nous dit-il, c'est probablement plus progressif que cela, mais l'adoption de cette technologie reste indéniable. L'analyse de Fortune, qui révèle un écart de 25 milliards de dollars à combler, cette étude révèle un écart donc préoccupant entre les investissements actuels et les revenus générés. Pour justifier les investissements actuels, les entreprises d'IA devraient générer, selon Fortune, 40 milliards de dollars de revenus annuels alors qu'elles n'en produisent que 15 à 20 milliards. Ce qui est déjà pas mal. Je me demandais si cet écart de 20 à 25 milliards de dollars pouvait représenter un risque systémique susceptible de déclencher un éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Schaffrick reste relativement optimiste sur ce point. Le marché, nous dit-il, dispose encore de suffisamment de liquidités pour combler ces écarts de revenus, au moins pendant un certain temps. Et je constate également que les plus grandes entreprises de la planète sont déterminées à continuer d'utiliser ces logiciels. Si cela implique un surcoût raisonnable, disons quelques points de pourcentage de plus que ce qu'elles payent aujourd'hui, alors elles l'accepteront. Si les grandes entreprises acceptent ces surcoûts, c'est qu'elles constatent une valeur ajoutée progressive, même si elle n'a pas encore atteint le niveau de transformation promis qui pourrait éviter un éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Autre chose qu'on entend sur le terrain, la régression des LLM est un signal d'alerte. Un élément particulièrement troublant dans l'écosystème actuel, c'est l'étude de NewsGuard qui révèle que les principaux systèmes de grands modèles de langage ne progressent plus et qu'ils régressent, générant davantage d'hallucinations et d'erreurs. Ce constat soulève des questions fondamentales sur la maturité actuelle de la technologie et son impact sur les risques d'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Je ne prétends pas que les grands modèles de langage et l'IA générative progressent de manière linéaire, nous dit Bernard Chaffrick, ni que cette technologie sera révolutionnaire malgré les promesses. Comme nous l'avons constaté avec les technologies émergentes depuis des décennies, nous dit-il, voire des siècles, seules de véritables ruptures technologiques et non de simples évolutions permettent de tenir de telles promesses. Cette vision des limites actuelles de l'IA n'entame en rien l'optimisme à long terme de Bernard. Mais, je cite toujours, je reste convaincu que ces ruptures se produiront, pas dans les 7, 8, 9 ou 12 prochains mois, mais peut-être à plus long terme, d'autres choses émergeront. Passons à l'efficacité énergétique qui est le talon d'Achille de l'IA. L'une des critiques les plus percutantes de Chaffrick porte sur l'efficacité énergétique des systèmes actuels. Sa comparaison entre le cerveau humain et les centres de données est frappante et pertinente pour comprendre si nous sommes confrontés à un éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Si nous comparons la quantité d'énergie dont nos cerveaux ont besoin pour produire une inférence donnée, nous dit-il, et ce qu'un grand modèle de langage consommerait en électricité pour obtenir le même résultat, cette voie ne peut être viable, nous dit-il. Cette inefficacité énergétique constitue un obstacle majeur au passage à l'échelle et nécessitera des ruptures technologiques importantes, ce qui pourrait influencer le calendrier d'un éventuel éclatement de la bulle IA. Passons maintenant aux échecs des projets pilotes. Est-ce une situation normale ou un signal d'alarme ? Le taux d'échec de 95% des projets pilotes d'IA en entreprise révélé par une étude du MIT pourrait sembler alarmant et annoncer un éclatement imminent de la bulle. Pourtant, Chaffrick replace ce chiffre dans son contexte historique. C'est parfaitement normal, nous dit-il. En tant qu'analyste spécialisé dans la gestion d'innovation, j'ai observé au fil du temps qu'environ 10% seulement de tous les MVP, Minimum Viable Products, preuves de concept et pilotes liés à l'innovation, débouchent sur un produit. Le problème viendrait plutôt d'attentes irréalistes. Tout le monde s'est rué dessus en pensant que, nous dit Bernard Chaffrick, puisque c'est accessible via le langage naturel, ce serait plus facile à déployer et à mettre en œuvre sans inconvénient ni aspect négatif. Cela pourrait expliquer un taux d'échec légèrement supérieur aux technologies précédentes. Alors passons à la question que tout le monde a sur les lèvres, l'IA générale. Malgré ses limites actuelles, Bernard Chaffrick maintient sa prédiction audacieuse formulée dans son analyse de juillet 2025, démystifier l'intelligence artificielle générale. L'intelligence artificielle générale représente, selon lui, le plus grand bouleversement technologique que nous ayons jamais connu et il commence maintenant. Cette vision, qui pourrait influencer les scénarios d'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA, s'articule autour de 3 étapes de maturité. Premièrement, l'intelligence artificielle générale compétente se profile à l'horizon, nous dit-il. Nous prévoyons qu'entre 2026 et 2030, nous verrons émerger une intelligence artificielle générale compétente. Imaginez votre premier agent d'IA véritablement digne de confiance. Vous ne lui confierez peut-être pas encore les clés de votre voiture ou votre portefeuille, mais il pourrait accomplir des choses extraordinaires. Deuxièmement, les étapes suivantes se déploieraient sur des horizons plus lointains. L'IAG autonome d'ici 5 à 10 ans. Et enfin, l'IAG stratégique dans un futur plus éloigné encore. Alors les limites actuelles de l'IA, expérience contre entraînement. Un point crucial abordé lors de notre discussion porte sur la différence entre l'entraînement et l'expérience. Comme je l'ai fait remarquer à Chaffrick, l'expérience développe une pensée critique que les grands modèles de langage actuels ne possèdent pas encore, ce qui pourrait peser sur les risques d'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA. Sa réponse est claire. Nous pourrions atteindre un stade où la plupart d'entre nous, humains, seraient incapables de distinguer si notre interlocuteur est humain ou une machine. Certains domaines permettront encore de faire la distinction. Mais l'expérience est quelque chose que nous pourrions au moins partiellement résoudre avec davantage de données, de meilleures données, estime Chaffrick. La solution, selon lui, passe par une collecte massive de données. Une grande partie des milliards investis qui affluent vers toutes ces grandes entreprises sert également à collecter et organiser des données provenant de l'environnement physique. Rassembler toutes ces données permettra de créer quelque chose qui imite l'expérience. Alors que va-t-il rester aux humains ? La question philosophique de ce que deviendront les humains lorsque les machines nous dépasseront dans nos capacités de réflexion constitue la préoccupation personnelle de Chaffrick quant aux répercussions sociétales potentielles de l'IA avancée indépendamment de tout éclatement de la bulle. Je dois avouer que c'est mon scénario catastrophe personnel, nous dit Bernard. Ce n'est pas bon pour nous, humains, de rester inactifs. Il ne s'agit donc pas tant d'une question technique que d'un enjeu politique, sociétal, philosophique et psychologique. Nous en sommes encore loin, certes, mais nous nous en rapprochons. Alors il y a aussi le défi de la gouvernance. Sur la question du leadership dans cette transformation, Shafriq reconnaît la complexité. Les dirigeants sont censés diriger. La vraie question est plutôt de savoir s'ils s'entourent volontairement d'experts aux compétences variées capables de les conseiller. Techniquement, c'est possible. Sont-ils prêts à le faire? Voilà toute la question. Sa confiance dans notre capacité d'adaptation reste intacte. Je reste convaincu, nous dit-il, qu'une fois conscients des véritables dangers de certaines technologies, nous saurons nous remettre en question. Nous avons toujours trouvé le moyen d'avancer et nous le trouverons encore cette fois. En conclusion, au-delà du débat sur l'éclatement de la bulle, notre conversation avec Bernard Shafriq révèle que la question d'éclatement de cette bulle dépasse largement les simples considérations financières. Si les marchés financiers connaîtront probablement des corrections, la technologie sous-jacente produit sa progression inexorable. Le principal enseignement est celui-ci, nous assistons à une transformation fondamentale qui perdurera quelles que soient les turbulences des marchés. L'analyse de Shafriq suggère que plutôt que de redouter un éclatement de la bulle de l'IA, nous ferions mieux de nous préparer aux bouleversements à venir. La technologie ne disparaîtra pas, mais elle évoluera selon des modalités que nous imaginons à peine aujourd'hui. À ce tournant décisif, la question n'est pas de savoir si la bulle de l'IA éclatera, mais comment nous naviguerons dans les profondes transformations sociétales et technologiques qui nous attendent. Le débat sur l'éclatement de la bulle de l'IA n'est finalement que le prélude à une réflexion bien plus vaste sur notre avenir au milieu de ces technologies toujours plus performantes. Et maintenant, je vous laisse en compagnie de Bernard Shafriq pour cette interview dans son intégralité en anglais.
Well, I'm here with Bernard Shafriq from Forrester. Bernard, you're principal analyst at Forrester Research. And you're a recognized expert in artificial intelligence. I really want to pick your brains about this forthcoming, apparently, AI bubble. So we're going to review with you some of these items that are telling about either a bubble or not a bubble and try and make sense out of this. So what do you think? If we had to answer this question in saying just one sentence, what would you say? Is the bubble going to burst in Q4 2025 like Ed Zitron has it?
It's almost impossible to get a one-sentence response from an analyst. And if you did, then actually that was the response. Allow me two sentences. Number one is, of course, it always depends on the role or the profile you're asking. If we are talking about financial investors, then yes, there are strong signals of this being a bubble because there is so much money being pumped into it. Just the more than 120 billion US dollars in capital expenditure on AI infrastructure alone, just by the Magnificent Seven tech providers. So that bubble could burst. But now, if you put yourself into the shoes of enterprise decision makers, tech decision makers, also AI users, there are many who'd say, I don't care if that bubble bursts. The technology is there and it won't go away. There is a lot of financial transactions happening, but actually we are starting to use the technology. We like what we see. It might not be that disruptive, transformative value we are seeing. It's incremental, but it's also the way how we adopt it. So no reason for this going to burst. And if so, we don't care because the vendors will make sure that it's continuing.
Yes. Okay. So what I understand is it may not deliver on the results the way we expected, but the change is such that it will not go. And exactly. Maybe even if the numbers do not add up, then it doesn't quite matter. I mean, we'll get up for it.
Yeah.
But it means that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money down the way, aren't they?
Exactly. That's going to happen. That's for sure. No matter if this is a typical bubble going to burst or the vendors that are out there today over time consolidating, and we will see convergence and the typical stuff we have been seeing for decades.
Yeah. Well, there's a revenue issue as well. I mean, Fortune's stressed that AI companies need to $40 billion in annual revenue to justify current investments versus only 15 to 20 billion today. Well, that's massive. Is that sufficient to cause the whole thing to crash or not?
There is still enough money in that market to back these revenue gaps, at least for a while. And what I'm also seeing is that, especially when it comes to the largest enterprises on the planet, they are convinced to continue using that software. And if it comes at a premium, which is decent, arguable, maybe a couple percentage points higher than what they are paying today for the software, then this seems to be acceptable. This is my take. And that's because they're getting incremental value from these investments. Again, they are not getting transformative, disruptive values yet, but the value promise still sticks. And even if not, incremental value gains are significant.
Okay. But at the same time, you have studies like this NewsGuard study, which was published, I think it was last week, showing that the main LLM systems are actually not progressing, but actually regressing and generating a lot of hallucinations or errors. And therefore, there is a risk as well that maybe we may have discovered something, but this is not exactly the right technology, that we may have to work on other combinations in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying that what we are seeing today with LLMs and agentic AI, that's going to be a linear way forward and will lead us to this disruptive value capture, which everybody is promising today. I'm convinced, and this, by the way, is a typical pattern we keep seeing for emerging technologies for decades and even centuries, by the way. So there must be these breakthrough technological revolutions rather than evolutions to, fulfill such value promises. And as you said, I'm quite convinced that today's LLMs, they have almost reached certain limitations, not only technical ones, but maybe conceptual ones, but for sure ones related to cost. So yes, unless we will see breakthrough inventions, we won't unlock that huge value promise. But I'm also convinced that these breakthroughs will happen, not within the next 7, 8, 9, 12 months, but maybe long term, maybe something else coming up.
Could some of these breakthroughs be related to the installation of the new LLMs, which could run off local machines and maybe resorting to less of these central data centers and, that, like the ones that are being built by Meta in Texas, which is absolutely massive, and which cost a lot of money. So wouldn't it be better to sort of distribute computing on both computers and central computing?
Sure. That could be a short-term forward. But I think if we think along these lines long-term, then the workload also in distributed architectures also has to drastically increase in order to cater for the required accuracy, the breadth of computation we would need. So I don't think that this is going to be a linear journey. And if we approach it from a different angle, if we look at the calories, the kilojoules our brains are requiring, to create a certain inference, or we conclude based upon 2 data points that something might happen with a certain probability. That might cost our brain maybe 1 kilocalorie. And the data center based on LLMs would require, I don't know how many thousands or even millions of the same, equaling energy, and which is electricity, right? And heat. So that cannot be the way forward. So, and that's why I'm convinced that we need a disruption in that whole space. Otherwise, we will not get that, because scalability is impossible, even though we think about distribution and things, and there will be some breakthroughs moving from LLMs to small language models. But still, this is not, in my opinion, this is not the magic box to solve it all.
Okay, so we can expect some major breakthroughs. We don't quite know when they will happen, nor who will execute them. Probably
exactly
major LLM providers or the Chinese counterparts.
Yes, and maybe something very surprising comes up, as we saw with ChatGPT. Who would have expected by the end of 2022 that this thing will hit the market? It was completely out of the blue for so many. And this is true, as you know, as you have been in that business for quite some time. Technological revolutions, they usually come as a surprise to many, except for those that have been involved. And I'm convinced this is the same story continuing with AI now.
Okay. Right, time will tell. If we come back to this MIT research that shows that 95% of corporate AI pilots are failing, and we're still talking about pilots, we're not even talking about projects. Is that something which is, in fact, well, maybe normal, that 95% of early projects for an early technology are failing? Or is it something terribly outrageous?
It's very normal. And as an analyst, I'm covering innovation management as a capability. And what I have been seeing through the years and decades is that, and that's a ballpark figure, about 10% of all innovation-related minimum viable products, proof of concepts, pilots will turn into something. And that something doesn't even necessarily have to be a new service or a product that will benefit customers and or employees. So these 5%, and that's also what we predicted a while ago, actually it's within a normal range. Now, the problem was that everybody rushed at it because everybody believed that since it's accessible through natural language, that it's easier to deploy, easier to implement. And there are no, drawbacks and negatives and cons. So it's actually just easy to do it. Everybody rushed at that. And that might explain that the failure rate is slightly higher than with technologies we saw in the past, like cloud computing and, 3D printing and things like that.
So maybe the problem isn't about generative AI per se, but the people actually talking about generative AI and in a hyperbolic way and thinking that things can be revolutionized overnight, and they can't. Okay.
Yep.
And talking about which, Gartner predicts that 30% of Gen AI projects will be abandoned after proof of concept by 2025. Once again, is that normal or not?
No surprise. It's actually what we keep seeing, not, as I already said, and you kindly repeated, not limited to AI, but almost every emerging technology we have seen throughout the last decades.
Yeah, but still you maintain that, as you stated in your July 2025 analysis, demystifying artificial general intelligence, that AGI, and we'll come back to that in a second, because that one I'm not so sure about. AGI is, and I'll quote you, the biggest change in tech we have ever seen, and is starting right now. Wow, I thought that after ChatGPT 5, we'd changed our minds about that.
We must distinguish two things. Number one is technology that's in a scientific evolutionary space, and technology that's already available for consumption, no matter if it's individual consumption or enterprise consumption or enterprise use. And AGI, or artificial general intelligence, that has been in the scientific community similar to AI also for decades. And there is a lot of research going on. And based on the research results we are seeing, not only the papers published, but also some of the results, which are not making it usually into the headlines of media, because again, they're very scientific, very mathematical. Not everybody would immediately understand those or is willing to spend so much time understanding the different impacts of such results. But it shows there is progress. Does that lead to a new ChatGPT revolution within the next 2 years? No. Is it going to lead to a trend that will help us to overcome the challenges we are seeing with today's AI agents and ChatGPTs? Definitely yes. Does that require breakthrough innovations which are not on the horizon yet? Definitely yes. But there is progress.
Okay. But all this takes time. I mean, as I said, I've been looking at this space since, well, time immemorial, but mostly 2020 when GPT-3 was released, and then we started seeing, actually not ChatGPT, but tools like writer.com, for instance, that started writing things. We had a hunch that, something was happening, and it's been 5 years already. So now, what time is it going to take for us to reach the next stage? Is it going to be another 10 years? Or?
So when it comes to artificial general intelligence, we distinguish 3 maturity stages. And the first one, which we are calling competent artificial general intelligence, that's luring around the corner. And we might even see the first impact starting next year. But our prediction is that between 2026 and 2030, we will see competent artificial general intelligence. And you could think of it as your first trustworthy AI agent. You might not want to give it your car keys or your wallet, but it might do amazing things and, leaving all the hallucination and biases we know from AI agents today behind. Still not super intelligent, but broadly intelligent to help you with. And just to conclude on that, the next step might be 10 years out, maybe 5 years out, but there is so much money in all these AI-related markets that the speed of innovation has tremendously accelerated. So it might very well be that within 5 years, we will see the next stage of AGI, which we are calling independent AGI. And that's something like your proficient digital colleague. It's not your human equivalent yet, but it's not only trustworthy, but very independent, like the physical robots we might see doing service work on our streets. And then the third step in that is what we are calling strategic AGI. And we don't know, of course, when this is going to come and will lead into products. Who knows? Maybe it's 15 years out, but it's going to be several steps that we as humans, as individual consumers, will be able to identify as a breakthrough or a new product or a new way of interacting with technology.
Wow. And so within 20 years from now, maybe this interview will be carried out by 2 robots then, talking to one another. Okay, who knows? Still, I mean, there's still this talk about AGI being more clever than humans. Is that a valid claim, or is it just nonsense?
I mean, who am I to know that, or anybody out there? What I for sure know is that superintelligence, Hollywood-infused doomsday scenario, superintelligence is something we won't see in our lifetimes. If that's going to come, probably yes, but when, nobody knows. And what it's going to do, nobody knows. Will we humans be able to put it into a solid framework of guardrails? Hopefully, yes, but who would know? But it's not something I would worry too much today. But what's important is to not make the same mistakes we made with, namely, ChatGPT, when everybody was surprised and rushed to the technology. We at Forrester start to talk about AGI right now because people should prepare. Decision makers should prepare. Individual consumers should prepare. Politics, social sciences, philosophy, all the other scientific disciplines out there must prepare for that. And prepare doesn't mean to be completely afraid and concerned and just talk doomsday scenarios, but rather think about how can we use the technology for the good, for the benefit of societies and individuals. What are the areas where we don't want the technology to actually lead? And this is something we can decide upon. And this is what I mean with preparation. So I think rather sooner than later, we should think about this general concept of AI, but not in terms of it's going to kill us all. Maybe ultimately it will, but not within the next 40, 50 years. And we have enough time to prepare, and we should use it.
Well, we've still got a few years to live.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to this competent AGI framework, obviously, agentic, as it's called, agentic AI has been around for a while with tools like Manners, for instance. And I must admit, I've hooked on Manners almost immediately, trying to it to do things for me like research and stuff like that, because I do a lot of research for my courses and others. And I must admit, I mean, okay, there was an idea behind it, but I wasn't really impressed with the result. So how come are we going to reach this competent AGI framework? And still, I mean, Manus is probably the most advanced of all. So how are we going to improve that concept?
Yeah. So that requires progress, obviously, on many fronts. And of course, one front is what you already alluded to, with different sets of architectures to reduce local workloads, also to increase performance of responses. Then accuracy is another thing. And what we know from today's agents is they're not really good at self-learning. So self-learning today requires cumbersome retraining cycles. They cost a lot of money. They cost relatively much time. Competent artificial channel intelligence will be much better at that. And of course, I don't have a solution yet, but there are signs of change on the horizon. And just when as we start on talking about self-learning, there is something called Alpha Evolve out there. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Now, of course, this is all in a lab state. That's coming from DeepMind. And Alpha Evolve is able to, you could call it an agent, able to learn structurally without human intervention from trial and error. Again, early lab state, but it's able to anticipate, to ask, to suggest, to maintain context. And if we think along these lines, I'm sure that there will be tremendous innovations on such self-learning mechanics that make your experiences much better than today. And the same is true for collaboration. Today's agents, they over-agree. They don't understand your nuances. They misunderstand your intent. But there are also early signals of that. This is possibly changing. Take Claude 4, that has moments of so-called apparent intuitions. And these are moments where we humans are sitting in front of our computers and think, It seems it got it without me having to explicitly explain it. Yes. Again, early lab state. But this makes me confident that so many researchers are working on all these fronts that finally we will get there.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm an avid Claude 4 user. And I'm using it to develop also a small application and it's doing a beautiful job. But its applications, it's easy because it's computers doing computer work. And that is easily understandable, even though it's a feat and I understand it. But yet, I mean, to become competent, this so-called AGI has got to learn something that goes beyond training, which is experience. Experience is what enables me as a teacher to select this information rather than that one, or take any kind of information with a pinch of salt when needs be. So that's, developing a critical eye. And I'm not sure that LLMs have reached that stage as yet, have they?
No, they haven't. They will reach stages that are much more mature than what we see today. And we might get to a point where most of us humans wouldn't be able to tell if, on the other side, there is still a human interacting with us or it's the machine. There will be areas where we will still be able to tell. But the experience topic is something we could at least partially solve with more data and better data. And this is what actually also happens. So much of the billions of investment money flowing now into all these big companies and startups and organizations, and you mentioned many of them, is also to collect and curate data, also from the physical environment. Physical doesn't only mean sensors of machines and in our cars, but also, all the data that are around us, collected in supermarkets, the way people move throughout, the whole supermarket and all the financial transactions that are subsequential to us going and flowing through the supermarkets. Bringing all these data together, healthcare data, and this is something, again, which is happening behind the scenes, will create something that appears to be experienced. Now, of course, none of these LLMs, thank God, has a consciousness. It's still limited to creatures and humans, which is good. And that to me is somewhat of a limitation, but by far we are not close to reaching that limitation. So there will be a massive time of data collection, and also all the trials and errors all of us are now doing with all these LLMs and ChatGPTs, they are also collected in terms of experience data, which will also improve the performance of all the futuristic agents and God knows what else in terms of terms we are coming up with. But this is going to lead to certain breakthroughs for sure.
Yeah.
That was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fascinating. Maybe one for the road. Because, we've got this recurring question about what will humans do when machines are actually better than us to do the thinking. What would be left for humans? Flipping hamburgers, playing cards?
That's my personal doomsday scenario, I must say. It's not good for us humans to just idle around, as we know.
Yeah.
And that has always been that North Star of autonomous enterprises, and not only autonomous humans, but humans that are only following any leisure activities. That's not going to benefit any society. I'm convinced about this. So it's not so much a technical conversation, but more a political, societal, psychological one.
Philosophical.
Philosophical. So I'm sure we are far away from this, but we are getting there, which is why, again, this topic of AGI, just as a concept of mind, not even talking about products yet, is very important to start now, exactly for such questions you just raised.
Yeah. But, who will make the decisions? It seems like, obviously no offense, but our rulers seem to be, not really getting any of this. At best, they're trying to run the race as fast as they can, but they do not seem to be giving any directions or shaping the future of the society that they want us to live in. Or
some do, many don't. Those that do, I'm very often, as a European, not necessarily inclined to follow or very happily reading what I'm reading, but I guess that's not necessarily the right discussion, because rulers are supposed to rule. The question is more like, are they intentionally gathering a diverse set of experts who would be able to consult them? And technically, this is possible. Are they willing to? It's another question. And it's also up to us individuals to have a clear opinion about technology today, technology usage today. We are not fascinatingly good at that, as we know, if you just look at how we use all these smartphones and the internet. But I'm still confident that once we are realizing the true dangers of certain technologies, we will start to rethink. And we have always found a way to move forward, and we will find a way this time as well. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm convinced we will find one.
Yeah, as you say, it's a very philosophical question.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard to say where all this thing is going, but at least I understand that the technology is not going. We're not going to go through any major bubble as yet, and that new technology breakthroughs will be coming down the road. We don't quite know when, but we've still got a long way to go.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Bernard.
You're welcome.
Surtout, n'oubliez pas de mettre une bonne note à ce podcast si vous l'avez apprécié.